Happy Sunday, lovelies. Welcome to the Jaden Show. I'm Jaden Cornelius. Now, I'm going back to United Kingdom today to meet author NICHOLAS DOBSON. He's made two really great books, The Regal Throne and Descent into Darkness. You're going to hear about them in a minute. But first, before we get to meet him, I think we should listen to a bit of music. This is called The Light, and this is by yours truly, Jaden Cornelius. Enjoy.
I know you feel alone, so far away from home, and emptiness has been your closest friend and his lies. If you believe that this will change and you can heal your past of pain, and you'll find beauty in the smallest things, and they'll make you smile again. Everything that you think, everything that you say in your life, it becomes how you're feeling. Change your heart, make it right, and inside you will find, in the dark of your night, you'll find the light. I think you're beautiful, you know. Time to let your spirit show. You'll find all that brings you happiness. You're free to love and trust again. This world, it ain't all bad. There is nothing you can't have. And this love that you share with everyone comes back to you again. Everything that you think, everything that you say in your life, it becomes how you're feeling. Change your heart, make it right, and inside you will find, in the dark of your night, you'll find the light. Don't let the fear of your past destroy your future. Hold on to love, take this risk, one more chance, you're safe to let your heart love again. Everything that you think, everything that you say in your life, it becomes how you're feeling. Change your heart, make it right, and inside you will find, in the dark of your night, you'll find the light. In the dark of your night, you found the light.
So today's show is all about Shakespeare because you're going to meet an amazing author who has written a more understandable, more user guide friendly version of some of Shakespeare's lives. Two amazing books, A Regal Throne and Descent into Darkness. You're going to meet the author, NICHOLAS Dobson, in a minute. But firstly, I would like just to show you, this is actually one of my favourite pieces of Shakespeare, and it's from the amazing Dame Judi Dench.
How do I love thee? Let me count the ways. I love thee to the depth and breadth and height my soul can reach, when feeling out of sight for the ends of being and ideal grace. I love thee to the level of every day's most quiet need, by sun and candlelight. I love thee freely, as men strive for right. I love thee purely, as they turn from praise. I love thee with a passion put to use in my old griefs, and with my childhood's faith. I love thee with a love I seem to lose with my lost saints. I love thee with the breath, smiles, tears of all my life, and if God choose, I shall but love thee better after death.
Now, I really can't wait for you to meet today's special guest, but first, I'm sorry kids, we're going to have to go to a Jaden Show commercial break. Enjoy. Okay, are you ready? Are you sitting comfortably? Then we shall begin. Please welcome today's very special guest, the amazing, the author, NICHOLAS Dobson. NICHOLAS Dobson, author extraordinaire. How are you, sir?
I'm very well and delighted to be on your show.
I'm delighted to have you on my show. From where are you, sunny Yorkshire?
We're in South Yorkshire here, where the sun is sort of on its way out today, but it's a fairly cold day. It's different from Mexico, because here what tell me it is, it's 6 degrees out there, so I think it's a bit warmer where you are.
Yes, 26, 28 where I am at the moment. But I did actually speak to my mother who's in London this morning. She went, it's getting bloody cold again. So I think she's had enough. She goes, it's been a really grey, cold winter. Nothing drastic, not like below minus figures, but she said it's been a long, dark winter this year.
Yeah, George Harrison has something to say about that. It's a long, cold something winter or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, well, obviously there was one back then as well, but yeah, my mum said this seems to be a long one. I want to talk to you because obviously you've written two amazing books. You're obviously a fan of Shakespeare and his work. So you've written The Regal Throne and Descent into Darkness, but you also spent 35 plus years as a lawyer. So I want to take you back to Minnie Dobson. You're kind of in and around your family, you know, when you're a very young kid. What was going on around you at that time? What was going on around you in the sense of, you know, were you an avid reader? What music was going on around you at that time? What was it like for little Dobson at the time?
Right. Well, I was born a long time ago in 1948, not long after the Second World War. And England was very different then. I grew up in Greater Manchester area. But I've always been interested in words and writing. And somebody mentioned to me when I was in my teens, a cousin who was more like an aunt really, that there was a fly on the outside of the window. And she said, "Oh, look, there's an insect." I said, "No, it's not an insect, it's an outsect," because it was on the outside. So I just had a feel for words. Books, when I could read, I loved Sherlock Holmes. I still do love Sherlock Holmes. They were beautiful stories, well written. And goodness knows what sort of imagination Conan Doyle, the author, had to be able to think up these very, very bizarre plots.
Oh, amazing! Yeah,
they're absolutely amazing. I loved it when Sherlock Holmes would disguise as a very disreputable individual. So you get Dr. Watson in a first-class carriage, and a very, very dirty man would come in. What are you doing in here? So do you realise it's first class? Well, Watson, do you not recognise your old flatmate? And then William books by Richard Crompton. William was a very naughty 10-year-old. And if you're 10, he was a bit of a hero. So I loved those. They were very well written. And then I grew up into the beginning of the rock and roll era. And then there was doo-wop. And then in my teens, the Beatles and the Rolling Stones. And it sort of went from there. Wow. But in terms of words, I've always liked words and always liked writing. So when I became a lawyer, most legal writing was extremely boring and very, very technical. But I tried to make it quite funny as well, whilst being legally accurate.
Okay.
My mother used to say, "Why don't you write something that people want to read rather than boring legally things?" And she had a point, but I mean, you're writing for all the lawyers, you've got to have a sufficient technical stuff in. I taught for 3 years before becoming a lawyer.
Okay.
And enjoyed trying to get Shakespeare across to youngsters, because Shakespeare is typecast by many as pretty boring and irrelevant. And the purpose behind the books, which I started to write when I retired from legals, is that human nature is much the same from Shakespeare's era as today. Mm-hmm. We're driven by the same things, and you meet the same type of people every day of your life as Shakespeare encountered. Yeah. So they're all there. So you've got power mad maniacs. You've got like Macbeth. Now Macbeth's an interesting character. He started life as a hero, national treasure hero, came back from the wars, having done great things, and all of a sudden it's not quite enough for him. He wants to be the top dog. And he meets the witches, who may be on one analysis, a dark side of his own conscience, but he meets the witches and he thinks, yeah, I'd like, he goes to see the king who's congratulating him. And he says, I really rather think I'd like that role. And it doesn't take him long to think, if he's there, then I won't be there. So if he's not there, I could be there.
That's my way in, yeah.
And it goes.
Funny, we still have quite a few politicians that feel that way.
We do. As I say, in the West.
And nothing that really changes with our species.
It doesn't. No, it's exactly
just our words and our descriptions.
In the West, politicians murder others' reputation. They say dreadful things about each other. In other parts of the world, then they actually kill them. Yeah. They do. So nothing much changes. The language in Shakespeare is a bit off-putting because although it's in English, early modern English is a bit different from the sort of language we speak every day.
Yeah.
The ordinary street language we speak is quite different from.
You're never going to read the word "in it" in a
You're not going to read in it. You're going to read. There's no in it.
I have to be honest, though. I just recently, a matter of days ago, just watched a little piece of Dame Judi Dench. Kind of.
Oh yeah.
Oh my goodness. I don't know how people can find it boring or irrelevant because it was the most beautiful, moving. Just incredible. I mean, and Dame Judi Dench is just a legend anyway. She's one of the most amazing actresses. But to hear her read, well, no, she wasn't reading. She was, kind of doing a little monologue on a show. And oh my goodness, incredible.
Yeah, she understands and she inhabits the characters.
Yeah.
And so if you've got somebody who inhabits the characters and with a true understanding of what's being said, it comes across. If you read it on the page, or if you got somebody boring reading it out loud, it doesn't come across. But the language sparkles, and it's not immediately, doesn't sort of jump off the page immediately. It does acquire a little bit of effort. What I try to do in the books is explain everything, all the words, but I put most of the notes about the stuff in the back, so you can go to them if you want. But I'm really trying. I tell the story with extracts from the speeches, but every word that's going to be difficult, I put a little footnote mark against it, so you can go to the back.
What made you decide to do that? Because it's quite a big challenge, quite a big feat you took on there.
It was a retirement project. I thought, well, my children they were quite bright, adult children, and I think they would never go near Shakespeare. I think that's so for so many people. I'm not sure how well taught it is at school, if it is taught at all. But I thought I would like to do something so that Shakespeare can be appreciated by everybody, so that whether school students, ordinary readers, or university students, or actors, or producers, because you really, to understand them, to really get the most out of it, you've got to understand what's being said. And there's all the sort of street language in Shakespeare, you won't understand it because the ordinary language has changed so much. And it's quite funny when they, there's quite a lot of rude jokes there, which you wouldn't get unless you sort of could decode it. And that's what I tried to do.
So is the next book going to be a decoding of the rude jokes, the jokes of Shakespeare?
Well, it's all in there already. The rude jokes are in the Regal Throne. Falstaff and his low-life friends. You've got it's interesting stories of power, the Regal Throne, because it's a story of three different kings. Two of them are quite flawed. Richard II wasted his time and abused power, basically, and lost his throne to a very ambitious chap who was a good political schmoozer, talked his way into the throne by toppling Richard, having him killed, and then having a bit of a conscience about it afterwards. And then he was Henry IV, chap called Bolingbroke, and he had a son called Harry, Prince Hal, and Prince Hal seemed to be an absolute waster, every father's sort of nightmare, really, and it's this particular father's nightmare too, Henry, and he had some low-life friends, Falstaff, a great fat, overindulgent, real waster, but really very funny and a big character, and lots of other ne'er-do-wells who weren't going to do anything for him at all. And his father was in despair at this. What am I going to do with him? What's England going to be like when this guy's in charge? But eventually he said right at the beginning, you think I'm a waster, but I know what I'm doing. I'm sort of, I'll come good. And he did. And he became Henry V. And he was a superb leader. And won a great battle at Agincourt in France with a really ragged and very, very sick army. Don't know how he did it. They were suffering from dysentery called the bloody flux. They're all passing blood and very, very run down. The French were all well fed, and so it was a heroic thing, and he managed to inspire them by going round at night time, going round the camp and speaking to ordinary soldiers. And as Shakespeare said, this was enough to magically transform the morale. He called it a little touch of Harry in the night, as though he was coming around with a magic wand and just touching them, and the morale suddenly rocketed, and they won the day.
Did you study Shakespeare, like just Shakespeare, or was you into like other kind of writings of the times, and was it more than just reading and enjoying and loving? Did you go to like visit places did you ever go to like different places like Stratford upon Avon and places that were kind of associated with Shakespeare to get more of a feel for him, or is it just something that you got from the books that you had read?
Well, I studied English at university a long time ago. I went to university when there was an album by the Beatles called Sgt. Pepper in 1967. Yeah. I just went up to university then and studied English for 3 years. So I encountered Shakespeare, of course, on the English course. I taught English for 3 years after that. But when I retired, it was essentially a desk exercise, really. I read these plays very intensely. Read them for fun, firstly, sort of got a handle on them, and then studied each one individually, and then went back and revised them, and brought out the first edition of the Regal Throne, and then I changed publisher. I went to Andrew at APS Books, great guy, great publisher, and he did a second edition for me. And he's also I thought I'd have a go at Macbeth, and he's published that. I've got another one on the stocks, which I'll be writing. I'm still writing it on a play called Measure for Measure, which is slightly less known. But that's about abuse of power.
Okay. Do you have a favourite story from Shakespeare?
Favourite story?
Yeah, favourite book. Favourite book.
I really liked Henry IV Part 1 because it's got sort of a bit of everything in it. It's got it introduces us to Falstaff and his low-life cronies. You've got the study of somebody who schmoozed their way into power and becoming really rather autocratic and really teeing people up. The people who got him to power, he was very high-handed with them. So it's a bit of a casebook in how not to manage people.
Yeah.
And so he gets a rebel uprising against him. And his son, who was such a ne'er-do-well waster, along with his cronies like Falstaff, actually comes quite good in there and is quite a good fighter in the battle and helps win the day for his dad. So I mean, it was a nice play. I did that at O level. O level is GCSE, I suppose we would say today.
Yeah.
Many years ago.
That's amazing, man. Do you? I mean, obviously, you've now written 2 books, very successful. Do you still read? Do you still sit down and read, or if you do read, do you kind of go back and read Shakespeare stuff, or who is one of your favourite authors at the moment?
I try and read something. I try and keep a book on the go always. Try and Dickens. I love Dickens.
Yeah.
He's interesting. You can see when he takes off. Sometimes he has to write himself in. I mean, he was like a script writer today. He'd be writing for a soap opera.
Yeah.
And sometimes, like the Christmas Carol is a good case.
Oh, it's amazing.
It starts fairly boringly. You can feel he's not quite there. And then his imagination takes him. It's a bit like a plane taxiing on the runway, and then suddenly they get the take off now and woof.
To be honest, I can't have a Christmas without it, to be fair.
Christmas Carol is lovely, isn't it?
I can't, yeah, every single year. I'm 50. Well, I just had my 51st Christmas. I'm now 52. So 50, for good 40 odd plus years of that, I've had to watch A Christmas Carol. Because amazing story, amazingly done. And some of the old versions as well, a bit of my favourite.
Oh, yeah, the old one with Alistair Simmer's Scrooge. Yeah. But a good way of experiencing Dickens, particularly for those who don't have a reading habit, is talking books. Because you've got very accomplished actors who do all the voices.
Okay.
And they're really, really good indeed. I read Little Dorrit recently. What am I reading at the moment? I thought I've never really got into Jane Austen.
No.
So I'm reading 2 things at the moment.
Okay.
I'm rereading a Sherlock Holmes story called The Sign of the Four, and Jane Austen's Persuasion.
Okay.
And for Jane Austen, it's just an insight into 18th century life at her level and what it was like for women then. It's so interesting that money was so important to them, very important, because without it, their lifestyle just is down the drain. So marriage was, as it always was is a property transaction.
Yeah.
You wouldn't think of marrying somebody unless they had money.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it wasn't always done, well, very rarely done for love, wasn't it? It was to...
No, I mean, love might be there as an optional extra, but it was the money that was the key thing.
It's quite. I was never a big reader when I was younger. I was more always into music, but in my later years, in my kind of 30s and 40s, I've been reading. I kind of started reading. I was always too scared to watch horror, so I could never watch horror on movies and things. But I got into James Herbert. That's how I very first started reading.
Yeah,
I started getting into Philippa Gregory. And because a lot of her stuff was about the Tudor England, and it was actually, it was quite dark as well. It was, it wasn't, all love and light about Henry VIII or, one of his relatives. And she would write one book from one particular character that featured character 2 in that book. But then the next book would be about character 2 and how she saw the whole story. And it was fascinating. I really got into Tudor England, for some reason, kind of really fascinates me a lot.
Yeah, somebody who studied it and could write about it convincingly. It's fantastic.
Yeah. Have you ever read Philippa Gregory?
I haven't. We've got one on the shelf, I noticed, because my wife has. I must have a go. I read now electronically because I've got on the iPad with Kindle.
Oh, nice.
It does so many things. First of all, you can heighten the font and you can read it in the dim, and it also you press on. I'm very interested in word derivations, so you can click on a word and it takes you to the Oxford Dictionary.
Wow,
so
amazing. Okay.
It does so many things. So I've got rather spoiled with real books. I had to read a real book recently. One of the books I read in the last month was The Climate of Treason by, and that was about the Burgess MacLean and Philby. I don't know whether you're aware of these. These were famous.
The names I recognise, but I don't know the story behind them.
Well, they were civil servants who spent a lot of time spying for Russia during the Cold War, and they were active throughout the Second World War. Philby, Burgess and MacLean disappeared when they were about to be unmasked and went to Moscow in 1951. Philby kept denying that he was a spy until he was cornered and disappeared again to Moscow. He became a colonel in the security service there. So it was quite interesting. It was quite a good historical book, The Climate of Treason, because it was all about how that state of mind would come to be, why so many of the country's top intellectuals, and these guys were all from Cambridge, decided to spy for the Russians. Yeah, but they didn't necessarily. There was a lot of naivety. They didn't know what Stalin's Soviet Union was like. It was a brutal dictatorial state, but they had idealistic notions of it being an equal society, where it was really quite bloodthirsty and oppressive.
Wow. Do you read anything light-hearted?
Light-hearted.
Is there an Enid Blyton or Barbara Cartland?
Well, I tell you what there is. There's a Rupert book, Rupert and
I love it.
Yes, I remember Rupert with great warmth, and I bought the Rupert Annual 2025 for myself. Yes, so I will read light stuff. Agatha Christie. Yeah, I like Agatha Christie. I read most things really if they're good. I'll tell you what I really do.
They have to keep you engaged. That's the main thing, right?
Yeah, they do. Philip Marlowe by Raymond Chandler. Have you ever read any of those? They're great. He's a hard-boiled but very, very straight and honest detective in the west coast of America, set in the 40s, and he meets some good gangster types in there, and he sort of always manages to come out on the bright side. Yeah, they're very, very good, and if you get the talking books of them, they're read by somebody that really gets into the character.
Wow.
Penguin have released some talking books, and they're nice to listen to in bed in the morning.
I'm going to check some of those out. I want to take you back to your books. How are they? I mean, obviously, which came first? It was The Regal Throne, right?
Regal Throne was the first one, yeah.
And how was that received? How did you feel we're publishing family now because Andrew Spark Publishing also has published my first book as well, my children's book. But when you first got your very first book published, how was it received? How did you feel?
I felt it was very relieved because, I mean, publishing is very, very commercial these days. If it's not going to, one of the troubles I've had was that I'm not a literary academic. I'm not a professor in a university. I've got a PhD, but actually in law, not in. So I don't have any academic cred on literature. I've got a degree in English, and that's a long time ago. So unless you're a name, it's a bit like being a movie star. You might be good, but I mean, Hollywood wants bankable stars. A name that's going to bring the people into the cinema, the box office,
of course,
whatever. So I'm not terribly bankable, but anyway, it was published, and the first publisher was University Press, and it was nice that it was there and available internationally. Whether anyone's bought any of it, I don't know. Getting people to spend money is a different thing, but I wasn't sure that their pricing strategy was a bit uncommercial, I thought.
Right.
And I thought it needs to be advertised at a more accessible rate. They were charging what I thought was an uncommercial rate. So I decided I'd do a second edition, update the Regal Throne, and took it to Andrew, and we've gone from there.
Yeah, he's a good boy.
He is. He's very good. Very hard working, and he's a good writer himself. Andrew and I mean, we met as lawyers on the sort of conference circuit. I was talking about what my mother would call boring legally things, and but we got on well as lawyers, and then I came across him when I realised he had a publishing business, so we took it from there.
Yeah, but you've got some. I mean, you're getting some really good reviews about your book. So it's been received.
Yes, we got a nice review from recently. It's nice when somebody gets it, if you know what I mean. Can really sort of understands it, and he did give a nice review. This chap, who is a writer himself, and he was a former. Well, I think he is a Church of England priest, but he's got quite a lot of different interests, and he writes on various things, and in the Times, the Old, various other places. He can put a sentence together himself. So it was a gratifying review. And what did he say? He says my book, it's unashamedly dense, but it's a revelation of the contents of the mind of Shakespeare as our greatest dramatist, and of the ages and influence which created that mind. He sort of understands what I was trying to do. He says I've so saturated myself in Shakespeare that I talk and write like Shakespeare, and I even think like Shakespeare. So he says, although I define the words and everything, I don't get in the way of what's being said. So I mean, he was just generally complimentary, which is
super lovely. Yeah, super lovely.
It's the recent review I had within the last week, really.
That's amazing. Fresh off the press, literally.
It is fresh off the press. It's actually it's likely to be published shortly, but he let me have a sight of it in advance. So it's even before it hits the newsstands, as it were.
Amazing. So what's going on for author Nicholas Dobson at the moment?
Well, I've got a sore hip which I've been trying to get better. It's just giving me a lot of pain. But wife and I are going to the lakes for a couple of nights next week. The Lake District, which is very famous for its rain, but it's a lovely part of the world. Having a couple of nights away there. Hope to be able to get some walking done despite the hip pain, and it's just a nice break, really, and I'm away from the desk.
And what about are you writing anything at the moment? Is something coming next?
Yes, as a book, Shakespeare play, as I think I've just mentioned in passing, called Measure for Measure. It comes from a biblical quotation. I think the Gospel of Matthew. Judge not. It's about being fair and not abusing your power. If you're so, don't judge, or you'll be judged yourself. And by the way you judge others, you will be judged by. And it concerns. I mean, it's a great play. It concerns basically hypocrisy and abuse of power. You've got this chap who holds himself up as the most virtuous man in the world, and his boss, who was basically the king, or called the Duke, he says, "I'm going away on business, but I'm going to leave you in charge. Do what you like, whatever laws you want to enact." But the Duke actually isn't going away. He wants to just see how his deputy gets on. So he comes back in disguised himself as a monk. And the deputy becomes really harsh. There used to be a law in that part of the world that if you have sex outside marriage, then that's a capital offence. You get your head chopped off. And he brings that back in and enforces it rigidly. And he enforced it against a guy that got his fiancée, his engaged lady, pregnant, and sentences him to death. And his sister goes along to plead for him. And his sister is a novitiate in a convent. So she's purer than pure. But he takes a fancy to her. He takes a really lustful fancy and sort of says, "Well, let your brother off if you sleep with me."
Outside of marriage.
Yeah, absolutely. And she says, "You can't be serious. You." Well, that's the deal. And so it's a torture tale, but it all ends up okay in the end. By the chap who's the king, who's the Duke, manages to pull the strings behind the scenes, but nobody knows he's still there, to make everything right in the end. But it's an interesting story. I'm just sort of still working on it. It won't be ready for some months, but I'll take that to Andrew when it's done. Measure for Measure.
You got to love that. Still, I mean, maybe not necessarily the same law, but still the same practices that go on to this day as well.
Well, exactly. Yes.
But I could do as I say, not as I do, right?
Do as I say, not as I do. Yeah. I remember in the staff room, the first school I taught at, way back in 1972, just of the year before you were born, one of the staff complaining about the actions of the head, saying, "Do as I say, not as I do," and it's still a factor. Hypocrisy.
Yeah, it's a Good old human traits.
It's a killer for politicians, isn't it? That they found they would really kill the opposition for doing what they actually end up doing themselves.
Absolutely, always the way.
Play well.
I want to take you back a little bit back to actually the year I was born, 1973, because I read that you had written and submitted an idea to, and the reason why I'm born.
Oh yeah.
When I was born, was my mum was trying to hold me a bit longer, but she didn't want to miss Coronation Street, so she got me out a little bit early before. Well, definitely before it's the had started.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
So, but you'd submitted an idea to Coron back in 1973. Was it taken?
I did.
Did it go?
Well, yeah. It was interesting background to that. We lived in Salford. I was brought up in Salford, which was where Coronation Street was set. And my father collected insurance in the Coronation Street streets, so we were well aware of them. And the little pubs at the end of each street, like the Rovers Return.
Like the Rovers, yeah.
Yeah, very, very much. And the people and the people like Ina Sharples, who would sort of. They were quite sort of authoritarian figures, really. So I knew it quite well. My father, collective insurance, and when I was born, he was an actor and used to be in repertory. So he got the odd part in Coronation Street. And so I'd occasionally see this, when he had a line to say, the scripts would come to the house, so I could read the scripts. So I sent some story ideas to Coronation Street, and I sent a model script, and they invited me into a few story conferences. This is where they gather around the table. In those days, with a great big book, which was the history of Coronation Street, just to make sure that they were aware of the back plot of all the characters. Yeah, with the producer and the casting director and on the writers, and I was inviting in there, and I came up with quite a few stories that went out.
Wow, amazing!
They were commissioned. The way they did it, the story conference would come up with the broad stories. Remember that one of the stories that went out was called "Story for Ken," and that was where I suggested that Ken, who was the street sort of intellectual at the time, he was a teacher.
Barlow, yeah.
In Barlow. And I thought he always had a less intelligent girlfriend. Why not have somebody who was more intelligent than him? So they brought in Joanna Lumley to play his girlfriend. But that was the idea, that somebody would be commissioned to produce storylines for what was decided at the story conference, and then somebody else would be commissioned to actually write it. So that's how it worked. It worked on a 3-week cycle. The story conferences were regular. So I went to a few of those. But then my career went in other ways. But it was a good experience. That's why I sort of think Dickens was very much... He wrote... it was like soap operas, really. He'd write a chapter and publish it in a magazine. And people would be really anxious to read the next month for that to come out, so we could see what was going to go on.
Yeah.
Not like Coronation Street, which always ended on a sort of cliffhanger.
Yeah. I loved it.
I don't know. I haven't watched it for years, so
it started becoming too real for me with all the soap operas as well. So I kind of haven't watched them for 20 odd years. But back in the day, they were our staple viewing, quite frankly.
Back in the day, yes, they were. Yes,
very different world. Very different world.
Yeah, that was Coronation.
Yeah, I loved it. Wow, that's amazing. So what does the future hold? So what are your plans for the future with regards to your books, the publishing? I mean, do you have any other plans? Are you script writing? Are you film writing?
No, I'm just... what brings in it keeps the brain ticking, is doing the legal writing. So it's sort of every so often I'll need to produce a couple of I write for 2 legal journals.
Wow.
I'll finish Measure for Measure, the book on Measure for Measure. I'm not thinking of writing another Shakespeare book at the moment, so I need to see what I might want to do after then. I'd like to spend a bit more time reading and walking, really. I've got a bit unfit since I started on Shakespeare about 10 years ago. I spend a lot of time at the desk, so I could do with being out and about a bit more.
Yeah, bit of time out, bit of you time.
Yeah, a lot of away from the screen and the writing and the text. But I'll still be doing something apart from the legals. I'll be writing something, I'm sure.
Yeah, I'm sure once you've got that bug, it's not easy to get rid of. So I'm sure after a little bit of time, you're like, oh, I need to get my teeth into something else. I'm pretty sure. It
is a bug. I remember reading as a child Sinbad the Sailor in the Arabian Nights. Terrible things would happen to him, and he'd come back and he'd get safe. And then he said, after a little while, I began to get bored and think I'd go to sea again. You think, well, just don't. You know what's going to happen to you if you do that. But it's the same with writing, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, mate, firstly, thank you so much for coming on my show. I really appreciate, and I'm very grateful for the time that you've taken to get back on that desk and to come and spend a bit of time with me and talk about your books. I wish you so much success with them. It'll be amazing. So thank you so much for your time today. People at home, you've met him. You really do need to go and purchase his books. You're going to find him on Amazon and on Andrew Spark Publishing. They're available there as well, right?
Yeah, they're quite cheap on Kindle, on the electronic books. If you don't want to, they're quite nice to read on there as well, because you can just click on the number for the footnote and you're straight there, and then click back. But a lot of people like straightforward books, so the paperback's a bit cheaper than the hardback. Yeah,
I've got to be honest, I like the smell, the texture, the feel of having a book. I love that.
They are lovely. Bookshops smell lovely.
Oh, yeah. My goodness, yeah. One day when I grow up, maybe I'll have my own little one.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to growing up myself.
Yeah, I got to 52 without doing it, so I think my chances are very minimal. But, who knows? Stranger things have happened, right?
Well, I'm well over 70, but it might happen sort of next week, I know, for me.
Maybe it'll still happen for both of us at some point.
Thanks, Jaden. It's been a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you so much. I wish you love, success, and £1,000,000 book sales worldwide would be amazing. You take care. We are in touch, and we'll catch up again soon.
All the best. Thanks, Jaden.
Yeah, my friend. Bye-bye.
Bye.
What a wonderful gent. I hope you'll go and purchase his books from Amazon. Go and check him out and go and read his stuff. It's amazing. I wish you all the luck in the world, Mr. Dobson, and can't wait to hear from you again about your your future books. No. What an amazing gent. I hope you'll all go to Amazon and buy his book. You can get it on Kindle, remember, as well, and give it a good read. It'll definitely be worth your while. And please share it with your friends and your families. Please make sure you have liked, subscribed, commented, shared this show. And I will see you next week on The Jaden Show with another fantabulous person. In the meantime, I'm going to leave you. I tried to get Nicholas to sing, but he wasn't going to do it. So I'm going to leave you with another Jaden Cornelious song. This is called Discover the Gift. And this is also in memory of one of my besties who passed away in March of this year, Stedman Pearson from 80s sensational pop group 5 Star. This is Discover the Gift. Enjoy. I'll see you next week on my show. Take care. Bye-bye.
You don't have a plan, you don't feel it's right. Deep inside you have this need to bring your dreams alive. You're feeling alone, no one understands. You have so much to give, just need a helping hand. Taking that first step will lead to many more beside it. I am here with you now to love you and to guide. Just trust the way you feel. See the beauty from inside. Allow yourself to be. Express all that you hide. When you discover the gift inside, love is a feeling you cannot hide. This is the truth between you and I. And all you feel when I am with you, love is the gift inside. Come take my hand, share exciting times. The future is sacred for you and I. When you discover the gift inside. With all that I am and all that you are, together we can shine brighter than any star. The world has beaten us down, life had robbed our desires, but from the ashes like a phoenix we rose from the fire. Risking it all, our hearts have grown so close together. The whole world just stops and stares at this gift that you had shown. Never will you have to change. See the beauty from inside. Allow yourself to be. Express all that you hide. When you discover the gift inside, love is a feeling you cannot hide. This is the truth between you and I. And all you feel when I am with you, love is a gift inside. Come take my hand, share exciting times. The future is sacred for you and I. When you discover the gift inside. No one said life would be so easy, but if your eyes can find the beauty in every day, yeah, and when you smile, life looks amazing. Nothing compares to how this feels. When you discover the gift inside, love is a feeling you cannot hide. This is the truth between you and I. And all you feel when I am with you, love is the gift inside. Come take my hand, share exciting times. The future is sacred for you and I. When you discover the gift inside. When you discover the gift